When I first saw the previews of the Dominion box, probably like most people, my focus went straight onto Yndrasta and her big wings, her dynamic base, and the newest models for the Stormcast. But it wasn't until I finally got around to build the box that I became a bigger fan of the Cruel Boys. Seeing them in previews, I had little interest in them. I thought their legs were a bit stumpy, and I've never really been drawn to Orruks in the fantasy setting. So why a sudden change of heart? Before I go any further, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in last week's video, but the goal for this year is to try and clear through my hobby backlog as best I can. So much of it really started to stack up to the point where it was getting a little bit embarrassing almost. I have so many ideas for projects to do, but I got into the routine of just buying stuff and setting it aside until the next new thing comes along. So for 2022, I created projects just like the Road to the Killaboss to keep the focus on clearing the backlog. But that's my main goal for this year. Let me know in the comment section what's your hobby goals for 2022. Back to the Cruel Boys. It wasn't until I was physically holding the models that I appreciated how different they were from normal fantasy Orruks. They're still big, but they're not the big bulging muscle Orruks. I still think their legs are a bit stumpy, but I'm looking at that in a positive way that again makes them physically different from your average Orruk. But my favourite thing about these guys is the whole they came from the swamp theme. You don't really get to see that with the Hobgrots, but the rest have the whole rag wearing swamp look on them. But the thing that all Orruks have in common is that green skin tone, which is what I'll be covering today. But before I start, let's have a look at the list. So far we have the Hobgrot unit finished, which is a great start because this unit has the highest model count. Last week's video showed how I painted their skin, so this week is the classic green Orruk skin that I'm going to be painting up to have your Orruks battle ready. And I actually ended up using the wrong type of green paint this week, so let's see how I get on with that. I had picked up the Orruk Flesh base paint when I bought the Dominion box to paint the Cruel Boys that colour. But for some reason when Past Sponge sat down to paint the rest of the unit, he started using Waaagh Flesh as the base colour. A much darker colour than I wanted to use. Sometimes I wonder why I even wear these glasses at all. And staying on the subject of Past Sponge, well done on keeping painting notes. Really good job there, pal. So it looks like we're going to have to go with the base colour of Waaagh Flesh. Since it is a much darker colour, you could get away with a single coat, but to play it safe, I go with 2 thin coats. I started painting the base colours of the rest of the model, and when the Waaagh Flesh was dry, I started the next step, which was applying a shade of Antonian Camo Shade. Usually I'm a bit more sparse when it comes to applying shade, but for bigger units like this, it's a great time saver to just apply it all over. But it's really important not to apply too much. Don't let the shade pool up, spread it around as best you can, and find that perfect shade balance. Now we come to the final part. I layered the skin with a brighter green to try and have some resemblance of the brighter green I wanted originally. I had very little types of green paints in my collection, so I went with Warboss Green. I layered 2 coats over the model, avoiding the deeper recessed parts. I picked out the most prominent parts of the face and the ears, and I really wasn't sure how the Warboss Green was going to turn out. At first I thought it was too much of a contrast between the Waaagh Flesh base colour and would throw the whole thing off. But actually it ended up working out pretty well in the end. Now that the unit is finished, I was starting to think about the darker shade of green on the skin. Maybe this is turning out to be a good thing. I'm liking the idea of the Gutrippaz having a slightly darker shade of green from the other units. So it does actually look like some good come out of that painting mix up. Like I mentioned before, having these models physically in front of me and after painting them, it really has me thinking of expanding this army in the future. Now I know I said my goal this year is to clear the backlog as much as I can, but maybe I could sneak in a monster Cruel Boy in there somehow. Next week we are moving on to the Man Skewer Bolt Boys, with hopefully the original skin tone I wanted. And I'm going to be covering how I painted their crossbows in that video. So if you guys like this video, make sure to let me know in the comment section below. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't. And once again, thanks for watching. See you guys next video.